All right, so as you said, this may look like a talk about front-end, but it generally applies to like any technology, front-end, back-end. If you're doing PHP, Java, it doesn't matter, so it's more of a generic talk. But the biggest problem that we have is the problem in front-end. So let's start with my vision of summer 2018. So last year I gave a lot of talks about GraphQL and state management and so on, and I decided to take a break for the summer, and I thought that during this summer I'm going to release something awesome, you know, I'm gonna make some cool product and finally launch it instead of just talking about something, gather my thoughts, and then do a new talk. So that was my vision. This was the reality of my summer 2018, and you might think, oh, it's because it was summer, it's hot, and you were sweating while coding. No, I wasn't sweating because I was coding. I was sweating because sometimes I tweet polarizing stuff like this, and then I get roasted from like 198 people on Twitter. And I'm pretty sure that, like, I've read only 10 of the replies, but I'm pretty sure that the rest of the 181 are just positive comments about me, my mom. It's just the best comments ever. So what I tweeted here, I wanted to have a discussion, all right? I wanted to have like a hypothetical situation where we would start front-end from scratch, like nothing would exist. And then we would choose different technologies on how do we do things. So the problem here is when you see these keywords, like REST, GraphQL, and JSX, and CSS, you get defensive immediately. Because you're using something right now, and you immediately go on that side, and you don't even want to understand what I'm trying to say and the discussion that I'm trying to have. You just want to argue because you're using this thing, or that thing, or the other thing. So what I wanted to say is, like, let's imagine we're starting from scratch, and we have to choose a way of styling. So we have two ways. They don't have a names. They're not called CSS or CSS in JS. They don't have a name. And one of the ways, we describe it as this. We have an element, we want to style it, and the browser has to figure out from 10 different files that are big and have millions of rules. The browser should combine all the rules, gather them together, and finally find the rule that's going to style this element. That's styling method number 1. It doesn't have a name. And we have styling method number 2, which also doesn't have a name, and we describe it as you have an element, you tell it how to be styled, and it's styled in that way. What do you think developers would choose? If it didn't have a name, if no one was biased, I don't think that anyone would choose, oh, I like this, the thing where we have like 20 files and the browser is going to guess. Same things goes, let's say, for GraphQL and REST. If they didn't have names and you describe to someone who's just inventing a new front-end technology and you tell them, okay, you have two ways of fetching data. One way is whenever you need a couple of different things, you need to do like 5 different network requests and then combine them on the client, normalize them, do a bunch of things. And the other way is when you need 5 things, you just tell the server, I need these 5 things. And I think most people, if they're not biased, they're going to say, I think the second thing sounds better. But I'm not here to defend my tweet. I just wanted to, well, actually defend it a little bit. But why did I put this in the beginning of the slides? Because usually in the presentation that I was doing last year, I had an intro section about fear of missing out, about encouraging people to do talks at meetups, at conferences, to do workshops, to teach other people and so on. So I'm usually encouraging to everyone. I don't want to divide people, that we have beginners, senior engineers and so on. And I felt really bad because some of these replies were like, you're bad towards beginners, you're injecting this kind of fear that beginners are missing out on new technology and so on. So I decided in this new talk, I'm also going to have this same section that I had in the previous one. So I had a problem with these 3 words, all right? Ninja developer, senior developer, and Rockstar developer. So let's dissect them one by one. The first one, ninja developer. Have you ever seen a person on a roof doing Webpack and CSS at 4 a.m. at night? No, they do ninja stuff. Then we have the next one. We have senior developer. How the hell do you define this? No one knows the definition, and you just put it in your bio, you put it on LinkedIn, you just say that you're a senior, someone is a senior. For me, the only senior developer can be this guy. We can call him senior developer, or maybe this guy, senior developer. And then we have the third one, which is pissing me off, and it's Rockstar developer. So they're going to say, oh, he's a Rockstar developer. Have you people seen a Rockstar? Have people seen a Rockstar? So Rockstars have hair, guitars, they're rocking stages on stadiums. So this is a Rockstar, and this is everything but a Rockstar. Okay, let's make it clear. All right, except this guy. So this guy is working on a Yarn team, and he has put the first pull request for removing node modules from your projects. So this guy is gonna clear like 50 gigabytes of storage from my machine because of removing node modules from every JavaScript project. So he is the only guy who can be a rock star, okay? And then we have the term, he rocked or she rocked the stage after a talk for someone. And I hate it, because the reality of giving a talk is more like this. He read his notes from made on a plane slides, trembling for 30 minutes while praying that people won't find out he's a fraud. So this is the reality, not rocking the stage. The conclusion is, why do I have this segment? I want everyone to be encouraged to talk at a conference, to talk at a meetup, to give workshops, because really the speakers, I don't want to say it, but we're nothing special, all right? We just figured out something, we made some slides, and we want to give a talk around it. At the end of the day, all of us, all the developers, are code monkeys trying to make weird libraries work together by writing shitty hacks. So that's the intro. That being said, hi, I'm Kitze. I'm a Ninja senior. No, I'm kidding. I like making products. I said that I like open source not until so long ago, but now I'm just saying I like open sourcing libraries and not touching them ever again. And I like teaching. So we did a couple of workshops here with Making Waves. I have this, reactacademy.io, and we do workshops for a bunch of these technologies. So let's talk about your vision of yourself after the conference. You think everything's going to finish, you're going to relax a little bit, and you're going to be like filled with knowledge and everything's going to be cool. But the reality is, after the conference, you're going to be like this. You're going to be sweating a little bit. And why? I'm not, because I have a flight. I'm not going to watch all the talks. But you're going to be sweating because of FOMO. So at every conference that I'm attending, when I listen to a bunch of talks, it only injects FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. So let's see the standard Wikipedia definition for what is FOMO. It's a pervasive apprehension that others might be having rewarding experiences from which one is absent, blah, blah, blah. So we feel like we're missing out on something. I have a everyone has their own specific version of FOMO. I have a specific one. I'm trying to cure it in a bunch of ways. But this is the hardest one for me. It's FOMO something. And this is the fear of mofos on Twitter tweeting dev stuff that you cannot find elsewhere. So even right now, as I'm giving this talk, I know that on Twitter there are people just posting about their libraries and the new stuff they're doing and so on. And all the time I have this fear of, I'm missing on half of this stuff, you know. And it's really hard thing. Like, if you don't have a Twitter account as a developer, you're blessed, because you're not filled with this pressure all the time that things are going on. Oh, we are on, I don't know, on jQuery 1.7, everything's fine. You don't know what's going on in the Twitter world. If you have, they're crazy. Like, all the time you think that people have it better than you, and it's really bad. Why do we have FOMO? So let's start one by one. Let's list the reasons why do we have FOMO as developers. We doubt ourselves. We doubt our code. We focus on the wrong things. We obsess with the wrong metrics. We have a lot of free time. We're so spoiled. So you have an Xbox in your company, we have a lot of free time, okay? And we love to procrastinate. This is the biggest problem that we have as a developers. So we're going to go through them one by one. We focus on the wrong things and we obsess with the wrong metrics. What does this mean? I'm going to give you an example. I'm having a beer with a friend and I was just learning GraphQL and he's telling me about their GraphQL stack. And I'm like, yeah, we started with some server, it works fine. He's like, no, let me tell you about our server. So what we did is we have 7 caching layers, and this data goes into this, and it caches it on a DNS, and it does we have multiple locations throughout the world. So I lost him after 5 seconds. I was like, yeah, totally, I get it, yeah, the cache, yeah, it works. So he's talking. I completely lost him, and I just interrupted, and I said, dude, what kind of app are you doing? Like, you're not Facebook. Why are you obsessing so much? He said something, I don't know how many milliseconds is their response time. Why are you doing that? What are you actually building? And then he answered with this, a landing page for a hospital. Like, there's never going to be a situation where the nurse is like, doctor, we're losing the patient because our GraphQL API for the website is not fast enough. It's really stupid to waste time on that, but yet he didn't. So we doubt ourselves and we doubt our code all the time. Raise your hand if this is you. I made something, it works, and I think it's awesome, but I'm not sure if it's right. All day, every day, right? You gotta get the approval from up above, from someone else, from someone who knows more, from the dev community, from Reddit, from Twitter. We feel like this all the time. But what is right and who is right? So these are questions that are not answered, and yet we believe that someone out there is better than us all the time. In our React community, you would see this kind of articles all the time. When something new comes out, you would go to the one end of the spectrum and you would see medium articles like, how are the components suck, all right? It cannot be used anymore, they suck, period. On the other side of the spectrum is render props are everything. Suddenly everything changed, we go to the other side of the spectrum. I think we failed to find like a healthy mix in between, and that's what we need. We had the same thing with Redux. If you're following what was going on a couple of years, let's say 2 years ago, everyone was like, we need Redux for everything. And suddenly, starting this year, you would see articles like Redux is dead. And we can just replace it with this and that, it's dead. So I still think that here we're failing to find the healthy mix. There are use cases where you might need Redux, there are use cases when you don't need Redux, but don't say that it's dead or that it's used for everything. We all know the person who's living on the bleeding edge and they're like, holy shit, you haven't tried this library, Redux Helicopter 7.9. It's amazing, you know, and it gives you that fear that, oh, we're missing out on something. And if you know me from Twitter, you would say, isn't this ironic that you are saying this? Because usually, sometimes for fun, I tweet stuff like this. The CoffeeScript plugin for Babel, I'm just inventing versions and keywords and mashing them together. And here the replies is like 4 guys being like, wait, is this real? Is CoffeeScript back? So you could see that even though you're inventing something, people are still having the fear that there might be, it's fucking CoffeeScript. It was dead like 7 years ago, but you still feel the fear that maybe now it's back and it's better, right? And I have to tell you, you gotta know the background of the person who's saying these things, who's writing the article, who's writing the tweet. If you don't know his context, then you will feel this fear of missing out because you don't know how does he work and so on. So I'm gonna tell you my context, my story. I work alone. I don't work for clients. I'm only doing the workshop thingy. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time, like every developer. I have all the time and I have a lot of free time to experiment with all of these libraries and things. And I'm going to make a Christmas tree out of this slide. So would you trust a person who does this on stage? No. So you got to know my context a little bit. And yet, given all of these things, given the free time I have, given everything that I listed there, I don't blindly jump on the latest and bleeding edge tech all the time. All right? If it's needed for my workshops or something, I might do it. But if I see that it hurts my productivity, I'm going to ignore it for as long as possible. So let's see a list of things that I haven't touched and are really, really popular in the community. Everything above React Router 2, I haven't ever written code for React Router 3 or 4. Reach Router is a new router for accessibility in React. I don't care. I've written a little router library a couple of years ago. It still works for all of my use cases. I don't need to know about these things. And there isn't a React project right now in production that doesn't have the first one or the second one. All right? They're like really popular. We have another things like Apollo 2.0, TypeScript, and service workers, and so on. Like for some of the things like CSS Grid, I've learned 3 properties from CSS Grid that I need. But I'm not going to dive into complex layout and stuff until I actually need it in one of my projects, given I still have all the free time to experiment with it. So how can we have FOMO NOMO? How can we help ourselves with this problem? We got to recognize the breaking points for moving between one thing to the other thing. And how do we do it? By asking these questions. How easy is the transition? Is now the right time? And do I really need it? Usually this is no and no, but we just lie to ourselves. So I'm going to tell you about some of my transitions. Floats to Flexbox. I wanted to center things like horizontally and vertically for the longest time. I was using all these CSS hacks. So when this came along, I had to learn everything. I still don't know the syntax I have to Google the syntax from time to time. But still, I knew that something was broken with this way and I just couldn't wait for the solution. So when it came along, I wanted to switch. Then we have Angular to React. I took the longest time, although it looks like now I'm giving workshops and I know everything about the latest React. I knew about React for maybe half a year or an year, and all of my colleagues in the company where I was freelancing were doing React, and they were like, dude, you're still on Angular 1, why don't you move your projects, blah, blah, blah. But we were shipping code for the users, so our goal was to fulfill the client needs and so on. We couldn't just switch to React. So I was like, I trust you. I think that what you're saying is right. React is good, whatever. He was like, oh, we're using JSX with Flow and TypeScript and this and that. And it was like a couple of years ago. I was like, I know about all of that. But I'm still going to find my breaking point for learning something new. And my breaking point was whenever I explained Angular to my roommate. So I believed in Angular, in all of those like buzzwords and stuff. And then my roommate said, can you just tell me that new framework you're babbling about Angular? And I'm like, sure, we're going to sit down over a beer and we're going to talk. And I start explaining Angular. And it's like, we only have factories, and then you put all of your data and you just inject it in a service, and the service goes in the controller, and then that goes in the root scope. Everything goes. And then when I started mentioning all of these buzzwords, I'm like, they're all the same thing. We need a different model for this like state management stuff. And at that point, I wanted to move to Angular 2, but then I moved to React. But I saw that something was wrong here. Okay, so when you see that something is wrong, you don't move right then at the spot. But just you have to keep your eye on what's out there, what other things are out there, how do they work, and find the breaking point to switch to the next thing. Then we have REST to GraphQL. So I was doing REST for the longest time, and every time I did REST or Firebase, I had the same problem. How do I combine these three things together? I have users, I have categories, I have posts. How do I combine them together? How do I invalidate the cache? How do I make it easy to put them on the client without making a mess? I always had that problem. So I always figured a solution. I used Redux, I normalized the store, I did something with Firebase, blah, blah, blah. But I knew something better must be coming along. This problem must be fixed. So when I saw GraphQL, I was like, this might be the solution. And then after, I don't know, after some long time, a couple of libraries came out for GraphQL. People started using it. They proved it was like nice in production and so on. And I decided for whenever we were migrating a project, the backend guy said, how about we rewrite the backend? And I said, maybe we can rewrite it in GraphQL. But it was really the right time. And from then onwards, for every new project, we're using GraphQL because it makes more sense. It doesn't mean that every transition is going to be right. It was funny at a conference where I gave a talk about GraphQL. There was a guy after me who gave a talk that they went to GraphQL and then they switched back, which is really funny and ironic. But it just didn't work out for them, and they were better with REST. So it doesn't have to mean that this is going to be right for you. And then while everyone was moving to Gatsby for static websites, I moved from Gatsby. So my landing page for the workshops was in Gatsby. And in order to change, to add a blog post or to add something on the page, it was a pain in the ass. So I was using it for so long, and I was like, okay, all right, I can do it. But when I got to a point where the technology stopped me from updating my landing page, like I needed to update something, and the thought of entering Gatsby and messing with it, I was like, fuck, I'm just not gonna update my landing page at all. So ever since this started stopping me from updating my landing page, I was like, I gotta find something new, you know? And when I found this, the transition was like really easy because you only change like 2 or 3 files. Your app remains the same. No one does this transition. Not a lot of people do this transition. Like this has 20,000 stars, this has 5,000. It's not as popular in the community. But for me, right now, I can update my landing page really easy. And for me, that's the value of it. I don't care if the other one is more popular. What do we have here? Oh yeah, CSS, my CSS journey. So I started with CSS, then I adopted Sass. Then I adopted BAM. Then I realized I'm becoming Angelina Jolie with adopting all of these technologies. And I did this. So basically from Sass and BAM, every time I was combining Sass and BAM in order to write class names, I realized that I'm babysitting my CSS basically. So instead of the CSS doing the work for me, I was doing the work to describe all of these class names. I learned another language. So Sass is literally another language. It's not CSS. It doesn't mean that if you know CSS, you're going to know Sass. You're learning an entire new set of rules, like those mixins, those for loops and so on. It's not JavaScript, it's not CSS, it's something else. So I learned another language. I learned a naming methodology that doesn't make any sense at all. And combined with them, I was babysitting my CSS. So whenever I solved this from Khan Academy, I was like, wait, so I can only write my styles and it's going to figure out the class names and everything else? That's amazing. But it's a bit slower. It runs in JavaScript. It's going to blow. I don't care. As the developer experience, it was amazing. Whatever you style something, you see that style. You don't have to guess. You don't have to babysit it. And then I saw styled components, which when I saw it at a conference, 2016, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So no one is going to write CSS inside of this weird template. Is anyone writing styled components here? One person, nice. It's like really weird syntax, but the author told me, just try it on a demo project, maybe you're gonna like it. And I was like, okay, that makes more sense than that, but I don't like this template literals. I need my objects, because this was using objects. And I was like, I would move eventually from this, not because of the size, it was huge, it was slow. I would move if someone comes out with the same thing, but with objects. And that was this. Literally the same thing, but with object styles. It was really easy to move to. And then I would never, ever move away from it. Because after this, there were like 50 CSS and JS libraries in the React world. And everyone was like, oh, emotion is better. That one is faster. This one does that. I didn't care until the author said, I'm going to deprecate it because I cannot maintain it anymore. So if you want an easy transition, you can just replace in your package JSON this with this. Still going to work the same. And that's why I did it. And after this, I don't know what can come out regarding styling. I'm really happy with this one. Until they deprecate it, I'm not moving on. Sleep on the decisions. All right, you got to sleep on these decisions. Let me just see the next slide. Yeah, so it's on this one. There is a guy who is, in real life, he's freezing his credit cards literally in the freezer. He was a shopping addict, and what he was doing, because he would easily spend money, he froze all of his credit cards in the freezer. So he goes out, and as a shopping addict, he's like, oh, I need this TV, I need that PS4 or something. And then if he really wants it, he needs to go home. He needs to unfreeze the credit card, leave it overnight, and tomorrow go to the store again. Most of the time, he never went back because he slept on the decision whether I really need the thing or I don't need it. So we're kind of doing that with all of these libraries and everything we see on NPM and everything that's cool. Yesterday at the speakers dinner, we had a conversation with one speaker. I don't know if he's here, but it was really funny. And he said he's bookmarking like a bunch of things with GitHub stars. And then when he starts a new project, like for example React, he went back into his GitHub stars and he was like, what can I install from here? Install, install, install. And that's like, it's like the shopping thing. You grab like a bunch of shirts, you know, install, install, install. I mean, it makes sense for experimenting, but some people are really doing that in their apps. So sleep on these decisions, figure out if you actually need it or not before you do the install, install, install thing. What I'm not saying is don't get too comfortable, all right? It doesn't mean that if you're doing one technology right now, it works. It doesn't mean that it's going to stick around, it's going to be there. You cannot sleep on your knowledge and be like, okay, I know everything, it's fine. So what I'm saying is stop learning just in case stuff, because as developers who are bored at work, we're doing this. We go on Medium, we see an article about SVGs, and suddenly you're an expert in SVGs, and that knowledge, you don't need it. Like as with everything you know, as everything you learned before, and you don't need use it for a couple of months, it fades away, right? If you ask me to write jQuery right now, I don't know how to write the methods. If you ask me to work to write Angular 1, although I worked with it for 2 years, I have no idea how to write it now because I forget most of the things. So this just-in-case stuff, when you read an article about service worker optimization and stuff, and you're like, one day I'm going to use it, you're not going to remember. So you're still going to go back to the article and read it again. So don't learn this just-in-case stuff all the time, but know about what's going on, what's currently trending in the front-end technologies, how and when it can be used, just so you know that you have an alternative to something. Then we have another point, less abstractions. Boy, do we like abstractions. This is a scientific scan, our brain on cocaine. So these areas are activated. Then we have another scan, our brain on sugar. It's even worse than cocaine. It's even greener. And then we have a Photoshop, which is not a scan, but I think this is our brain when it recognizes the opportunity for an abstraction. We get fired up. We get so smart, right? Anytime you see a copy-pasted code and you move it into a function, you're like, I'm a genius. You see two different styles, you move them into a class, you're like, I'm reusing styles. I'm a styling genius all the time. And most of the time, this leads to wasting time and to problems in our apps. Because when you see two same lines and you abstract them and you use them one time, two times, maybe the third to the fifth time, it's not going to apply to the abstraction. So you wasted a lot of time on making an abstraction, using it, and then you have to revert all of the abstractions to separate them back. And we do this all the time. Whether it's classes in object-oriented programming, whether it's functions in functional programming, whether it's CSS, we do all of these abstractions and they're just wasting time. My advice is more copy-paste. And I'm dead serious about this. Like anytime I have some logic that I want to reuse, I'm first going to copy-paste it in the other file. Then I'm going to copy-paste it again the third time. I'm going to leave it there for a while, but I feel a little bit bad about it too when I see it. I'm like, oh, I want to refactor you. And then when I really see the chance that this is 100% an abstraction, then I go and I abstract it in a function or something else. So I told you what not to focus on. We mention some things that we shouldn't focus on, and you might be like, well, all right, smartass, tell me what to focus on instead. So here are some things that you can focus on and not waste your time. Remember these guys? They're kind of why we're writing apps, but we kind of forget about it at the end of the day. So you have someone who is gonna be, you know, entertaining themselves as a developer all day without thinking about the users and the end users. So we're doing entertainment for ourselves. We love to entertain ourselves during work by doing positive procrastination. And what is this? Like you go to work, it's a little bit, you don't have a meeting, no one is telling you what to do, and you have a lot of free time, so you're going to use that free time to do something, right? And instead of doing what matters, instead of focusing on what matters in your code, like you know that there is a bug somewhere in Jira that you need to fix, but you are going to do something to entertain yourself. I don't mean watching Netflix. For example, in the React world, you would see something like this. You have a login form with 2 fields, input for a username and input for a password. And there would be someone who's going to spend the entire day installing Redux Saga and Redux Form and reading articles about combining Redux Saga, and Redux Form. And he's going to spend 8 hours. He's going to go home. He's going to tell his wife, honey, it was an amazing day at work. I did this, I did that. And at the end of the day, the user is going to go to the website and see 2 fields. And he's going to be like, I can log in. He's not even going to think I can log in. He can log in. That's it. If you spend your entire day on changing the mechanism for logging in for 2 fields, it's entertainment for yourself. It doesn't have any value for the user. And we're doing this all the time. What else can you focus on? So if you don't want to focus on your users, if you're like, okay, I work for a company, they are making some money on the users, I don't care about that. What else can you focus on as a developer? Let's see. Let's see first what developers want to talk about. Editor themes, fonts, folders. This is the worst discussion ever. Any frame. Well, I'm grouping my components in folder. Well, no, I group them by any page. No, I group them by views, and then it doesn't fucking matter. Just put all of them in a folder. It's not important, but we love to discuss it. Then we have controversial tweets. We have tabs versus spaces. We have Webpack is hard. We have framework wars. We have hacker news, semicolons, the versioning of Angular, and jokes about exiting Vim. They're old. We're done. Just forget about them. We want to talk about all of these things, but not what matters. So what does matter? It's about to get really uncomfortable here. I'm going to mention the M word. We all hate that as developers. You ready? Money. Developers don't want to talk about money. We would talk about anything on earth all the time, but we're not going to talk about users, and we're not going to talk about money. So not so long ago at a conference, they asked me to do, they had little, after the workshops, they had little panels, tables, and they said like every of the speakers can pick a topic they want to talk on, and someone is going to talk about PHP, someone is going to talk about jQuery, someone about JavaScript, someone about this and that, so everyone had to pick a topic. So I picked freelancing, and they said, after you're done with the workshop, all of you should go to the different hotel somewhere there and make sure to be on time because people are going to wait on tables to discuss the topic that you chose. So I finished my workshop a little bit late. I was running to the other hotel because I was late. And I entered there. I'm sweaty. I'm like, oh, finally we're going to... And then I enter the room and I find my booth with the little flag thingy. And then I see this. No one. If you see the other tables, like every table for every technology, for some, maybe there was a topic about jQuery, I don't even know. They were full. This, empty. No one. No developer wanted to talk about freelancing, about money, but they were interested in other things. What if I told you that the VS Code material purple midnight theme is not going to pay your rent? All right, we can discuss themes, but they're not really that important. It's funny because it's never been easier to make money as a developer. So what I mean by that is we have all the technology. Even though you're not a backend developer, you can throw a backend in an hour. You have like all of these services like Firebase, like Prisma, like GraphQL to instantly deploy backends. And if you're a real backend developer, you're going to say, that's not how you can do. I've done tons of them. And I'm a front-end engineer. I've never touched MySQL or SQL. I can still do a backend. It's crazy. For front-end, you can throw a couple of things. You can have your front. It's really amazing what one person can do with all the technology we have right now. And we're not using that to the full potential. Because it was not that some things are just going to disappear. You remember like making landing pages? There was always the guy or the girl in town who was like the expert on landing pages. So in order to have a landing page, let's say 3-4 years ago, you would have to know a guy who knows a girl, who knows a guy, who knows a girl. And he makes websites in his basement and he's charging $5,000 because he's the only one who understands that. Nowadays, you can go to Wix, to Webflow, drag and drop a couple of things, and you can throw yourself a landing page for $3 with hosting and SSL and everything. So that job, that person cannot make the same amount of money because that time is gone. And if you think that this time is going to remain as it is, you're very wrong. The same thing is going to repeat, but just in a different pattern. There are wrong ways to go about this, and there are right ways to go about this. Wrong ways about this. This is a quote from one of my ex-colleagues. He said this: I'm going to read a book, and my boss is going to acknowledge it, and he's going to give me a raise. It is that your boss doesn't care about what you know, okay? It's all about how much you value yourself, not about if you read a book or something. Or you do this during your work time or after work time. You're like, oh, I'm going to upgrade our tooling to something. Nobody cares, okay? Maybe you're going to entertain yourself. You're going to add something on your LinkedIn. This is not going to be that valued, because most of the time, the technical skills don't have much to do with the amount of money you're making as a developer. I'm going to give you an example. There's this Peter guy who's owner of Nomad List and a couple of like 2-3 other websites. And when he started learning web development, he started with his brother. And they all started at the same time. And Peter said, I want to make a website for nomads. So every time someone travels, they can see if the air is clean, how much is the hotel, is there Wi-Fi, blah, blah, blah. And I want to learn like the bare minimum of technology just to do that. So he figured out at the time it was PHP and jQuery, and he said, okay, I'm going to learn that. I'm going to monkey patch some code together, and I'm going to have a website. He started from a Google spreadsheet. And his brother said, nah, I'm going to use a framework like Meteor.js. I'm going to learn Meteor. So after a couple of months, Peter was hacking on a bunch of things, and he got this up and running. It was ugly, it was slow. He got it running with payments, with users, and so on. And after a couple of months, his brother knew Meteor.js. That's it. That technology is not relevant anymore. Everyone moved on to something else. Now he has a platform, and his brother knew something that's not relevant anymore. I'm going to give you even sadder news, because he has like open transparency for how much money he's making. This site is connected to his Stripe account or whatever. Alone, as a developer, without any framework, he's not using Laravel or some PHP framework, with just jQuery and PHP, he's making more than 50,000 euros per month alone. That's like this room times 10, and it's so sad because we know all the technology, right? There are amazing people here. We know this, we know databases, we know how to make everything fast, everything nice, everything pretty. We have designers. He's one guy. He has laser sharp focus on his users and what he wants to achieve, and he achieved that. And I really admire that. I respect that. It's not going to be that easy in the upcoming years. I already mentioned the example how some jobs went away and they're not coming back. And I'm going to give you another example from a while ago. So in factories, they had this guy, a factory lector. And everyone was bored and they needed entertainment. So they paid a guy to read the newspaper. And he couldn't see it coming. He was like, I have a job, everything is awesome, I'm bringing bread home, it's amazing. And one day, they just told him, can you come down? And they moved him aside and they put a radio there, bam. And he doesn't have a job anymore. So radio literally replaced these people, and they were left without a job. But he couldn't see it coming because he didn't have Reddit, he didn't have Hacker News to see factory lectors are going away because of radio. But we read these things all the time, that we are going away because of AI and machine learning. We just choose to ignore them, right? Nah, they're not going to automate it, we're gonna still work for years and years to come. Nope. This is a video from Microsoft where they have like visual recognition for instantly generating a scaffold for an app. And the output of this, you're just drawing on paper, and they have like AI recognizing all of the patterns. This is a drop down, this is blah, blah, blah. And it literally generates components. And it's really early. Just imagine what they're going to do in 5 years, right? It's a bit scary. And because it's Microsoft, they're going to throw in Clippy. And then Clippy is going to take your job. No, they're not going to throw in Clippy. They have Alexa. So here's some examples how Alexa can work in the future. So a manager, instead of telling you, can have an echo on his desk, and he can say, suggest me a couple of responsive menu styles for that header. She just does a bunch of machine learning, figures out like thousands of websites, finds the best one, and just mounts it into the app. Or can be like, Alexa, move that 3 pixels to the right. Alexa, move that back 5 pixels to the left. Alexa, move that 4 pixels to the right. And unlike your designer, Alexa is not going to bitch about anything. She's going to do it, like 3 pixels, 5 pixels. It's going to be fine. So this is what you could do. Unless you want to keep working on legacy systems, which is not bad. It's one of the highest paid jobs in our industry right now are from people who are working on legacy systems. And I'm dead serious about this. So we have something like Pascal, we have COBOL, we have Angular 1, and people are making money out of this. So the COBOL thing. This is so funny. There's a company called COBOL Cowboys, and their tagline is "Not our first rodeo," probably because they're 150 years in business as developers. And when I saw this website, a friend sent it to me. I was like, I gotta click this button because probably they're like super old dude programmers, you know. And when I click the button, you get this. These are the developers, and these, my friends, are the senior developers. And this is their junior who's joining this week to the company. So just imagine if you have perks at your company, like a football table and a PS4 and something. These guys get their blood changed every week. Because if they lose the back-end developer, the company is done. Like George went away and we got to close up shop. This is amazing what they're doing. But on a more serious note, I don't know what they're doing as a company, but I know about a person who's working with Angular, and we were talking, I don't know, 1.5 years ago, when the hype was about transitioning to React. A bunch of developers moved from that to that, and I asked him, like, dude, you're really smart. You have the opportunity. You work as a freelancer. Why don't you, move to teaching React instead of what you're doing with Angular? And he said, do you know how huge Angular is in Asia? Like, it's really, really, really huge, because those companies like adopted and they spent a lot of resources on making these huge systems. They're not gonna delete what they had just because some hype boy released a Medium article that React is good. They're still gonna stay on Angular 1, and they need support, they need training, they need workshops, they need videos, they need materials. Someone's gonna do it for them. And he was like, I'm gonna be focused on this, although I know there's something better, and I'm going to focus on making money. And he really, really, really made a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, sure, probably he's not making that much. And then he posted a couple of sports cars on Twitter, and I know Redux and React, and I drive with this. This is my travel method. But I feel better because I know Redux Saga. So, to sum it up in a couple of slides, I love that in our industry lately, we're seeing the first 2 points, like find your niche and stick to it. But point 3 is where most people fail. So there are amazing people who can specialize in TypeScript, they can specialize in database, whenever you think about a technology, like for example me, I can think of, if I think of MobX, I know the person who is the expert and I am going to contact him right away. And as for every technology, if I mention any name, you're going to think of that person and be like, yeah, we have that girl in our company who's doing this and that. But they're failing to make it profitable, which is actually the easiest step. We just choose to ignore it, like, we don't care, I'm an expert, but I don't care. And I would advise you to, if you have a niche, if you stuck to it, if you're an expert at something, just use number 3 and make it profitable in a way. To summarize the other things we talked about, so stop seeking external approval for everything that you write. Stop seeking answers in other people's projects. Stop feeling insecure about the code, because nobody knows actually what they're doing. Even though you see a nicely formatted repo on GitHub, nobody knows. Less abstractions and more copy-paste. This is a strong point. Recognize the breaking point before you move to A to B to C and so on. FOMO, the fear of missing out, is just the side effect of wrong priorities. When your priorities are not straight on your users, on your money or something else, then you would have the fear of missing out on something. If you focus on the right things, you're just going to execute towards that, and you're going to have less FOMO. There's no person with zero FOMO. And then we have focus on your users or on your money. And you'll be fine without Redux Helicopter 7.4. I want to thank you for listening. You can find more info about me here. And that's it. Thank you very much.